and welcome to another edition of the All Angels podcast. I am Dan Garcia, and of course, joined with
Chris, the Curator Johnson.
and back as special co-host Mike Browne. Mike, how you doing today?
I'm good, guys. Thanks for having me again.
So obviously, some things have happened in Angel Land over the last time we've talked. We did a podcast, and then I had a couple interviews, and so we're kind of back to wrap all that stuff up and maybe kind of even look into the future a little bit. So first thing, obviously, we have to talk signings. Not the signings that a lot of people thought were going to happen, but still some nonetheless. First one I'm going to bring up is obviously they kind of fill that catching position or backup catching position with Kurt Suzuki. Obviously, a lot of people know him from the Nationals, winning a title with them. Also, Cal State Fullerton won a title with them. So here's a little clip real quick about his signing process with the Angels.
Yeah, we had, an offer or two that, was for more playing time and for more money, obviously. But, at this point in my career, our main focus was staying close to home.
Obviously, like I said, Cal State Fullerton grad. Mike, come across the school. What did you think of the signing?
Yeah, I mean, Suzuki's been a guy that's been on my radar for a while now. I mean, going all the way back to when he was in Oakland A, probably 10 years ago or so now. But yeah, he's definitely a guy that will, probably give the Angels maybe 80 innings behind the dish, 90 innings behind the dish. He's not a guy that's going to give them 130 starts, a season now. He's kind of aged out of being kind of the regular catcher. So to me, he's kind of like a nice kind of backup / depth piece for the Angels. Obviously, you have Stassi coming back from an injury or from a surgery at the end of last season. So we'll see when Stassi comes back. But I think in the meantime, getting Suzuki, a veteran guy, is definitely more of an offensive catcher than a kind of a defensive guy. Early in his career, he had home run numbers in like the 10s and 12s. And then with the Nationals, he hit a few homers too. So definitely kind of a bat first guy as far as catchers go. But yeah, it's an interesting piece. He didn't cost much at all. So this is obviously, another one of Perry's or kind of the organization as a whole. They're kind of being very careful with their money in terms of the pickups. But this is it's pretty solid.
What do you think about it, Chris?
Yeah, man. Kind of like Mike said, veteran leadership, and not only with the pitching staff, which I think we always go to, okay, he can guide the pitching staff, but he could also help out, Stassi and some of the other catchers too. And I always like a guy that takes the hometown discount. That's something that we always talk about, like, oh, they're going to take the hometown discount, right? And they rarely do. I think Weaver was like one of the few guys that ever gave us that. But I think we're paying him like a little over like 1.5 million.
Right.
So in today's terms, that's a bargain. And he's a gamer. Like going back to his days in Oakland, he's always a guy that we respected. Looking at him, he never looked like a prototypical like catcher in my eyes, but yeah, he just goes out there and you saw that, and then bring in somebody with the world championship experience into the clubhouse. And I think that's one thing that we kind of lost over the years when like Torrey left. After Torrey, like I heard like the clubhouse was everyone took like a separate cab home from a game. So we lost that camaraderie. And so I think we gained it with Suzuki for sure.
And he did mention a little bit too about his hometown and being from Fullerton.
Obviously, went to college at Cal State Fullerton, right down the street, watching Angel games, throughout my college career. 2002 was my first year when the Angels won the World Series. Thought that was the coolest thing, ever.
So yeah, you mentioned right there his freshman year being right in the mix of all the winning the Angels did, and probably the obviously the franchise's number one memory is winning that World Series. I think I like what Mike said as far as he's going to be the backup, obviously, and then probably we'll start at the beginning of the year while Stassi recovers. But he's not the only signing the Angels did over the last time we talked, and obviously a pitcher, not the pitcher everyone was hoping for. He's still out there. But Jose Quintana, obviously a free agent signing, 1 year, $8 million, 32 years old, has been in Chicago, his whole career. Something I did like before this last season, you've heard, I don't know how many times with Angel fans that Angels pitchers, starting pitchers need to eat innings. We can't afford to go 2 and a third or 4 and a third or 3 and 2/3 or something like that and make it a bullpen game right off the bat. He's gone 170 innings in 7 seasons. Obviously, not last season because of the shortened season. I think he had a little injury issue, but nonetheless, seems like a guy that can eat up innings. And Chris, when you saw this, what did you think of the signing?
Well, I think we're kind of seeing a trend here with some of our recent acquisitions. It all comes back to comfortability with the guy and knowing the guy. And I think, Madden was there with him in Chicago. And so he's another Madden guy. And if we put trust in Madden we trust, we have to kind of believe that he's seen the guy and he knows, what he is and what he's going to bring. As far as age, he's 32. So I meant he had some good years in the South Side as well as at Wrigley, but another left-handed arm, durability. He'll give you innings. That's what the Angels have looked for years. I mean, it's not an ace like we all want, but I think he'll give us some durability out there for sure.
What do you think about the signing when it came across, Mike?
Yeah, I mean, I was a little bummed at first because I was like, oh man, this isn't really a guy that I'd been thinking about. But it's definitely a solid pickup. Definitely durability, definitely consistency. He was an all-star in 2016 with the White Sox. He's been just above a league average pitcher for the duration of his career. Only threw 10 innings last year because I think he had a kind of minor injury. But other than that, he's been pretty, as you were saying, pretty consistent as it goes for starters across the league. And yeah, did have some really good seasons with the White Sox before getting traded to the Cubs, and then was pretty reliable, pretty decent for the Cubs as well. So hopefully Madden can get the best out of him again this time around.
Yeah, what did you think about obviously a 1-year deal, but he's not that ace. Chris mentioned it. Where do you think he fits in with his rotation, Mike?
He's probably kind of in the middle, honestly. If this is kind of the last move that the Angels make for starters, which I don't think it will be, but I think he slots somewhere in that Haney range, under Bundy, Haney, and maybe Quintana goes into the 3 slot there. If this is the last move they make, but it's probably not going to be. At the end of the day, the Angels, in terms of the rotation, need bodies. They need arms. Just straight up. So I think this is a durable arm that they add, and if you can give them, a 4 ERA, low 4 ERA, and throw 140, 160 innings, I would take it at this point.
Yeah, Chris, where do you think he fits in with this rotation right now?
I think he kind of like Mike said. I think he's more like a number 3. You got to give Haney the respect that I feel like he's kind of earned over the last few years as being the leader on the pitching staff. But who knows? I don't think we can count Ohtani as a number 1. I think we got to kind of back off that. This Ohtani 1 stuff is, Ohtani with that small glimpse of greatness that we did see. We saw a number 1, but I think he's maybe a number 3, possibly a number 2. Who knows? On our staff, he could be a number 2. Anywhere else, he's probably like a number 4.
Yeah, and obviously you're trying to hope that you're going to benefit from kind of this lottery ticket. You don't know exactly what you're going to get with him. You don't know what Quintana is going to be, the young Quintana that put up a lot of innings, or a guy that might get hurt and not perform as well. Kind of like what Mike's saying. I don't think this is it as far as pitching acquisitions for the Angels. Obviously, there's a big name out there with Bauer, and it looks like the Mets have moved themselves into a situation where they can pick him up. They seem now to have a spot in that rotation for him. So let me ask you this real quick. I'll go with Mike first. Obviously, they're going to add someone, or we believe they're going to add someone. If that someone is like a Paxton, where do you see the Angels being in the division if that's the acquisition they go ahead and move forward with?
Yeah, somebody like a Paxton, makes a certain amount of sense, but at the same time, Paxton is rarely healthy. When he is healthy, he's pretty solid. He's a solid number 2. On most rotations if he's healthy, but that's kind of always been the question with him is Paxton's health. So, but if they say they add Paxton and they have Quintana to go in there, I think that the Angels probably maybe threatened for a wild card. Yeah, it's really hard to say. They would need Canning to kind of make the next step. I think they would need some of the guys they have in-house to kind of be very productive. They would need Bundy to kind of continue to have the season that he had last year. Canning, as I said, he would need to kind of take that next step that we kind of all expect and hope that he makes. So yeah, they would need some solid consistency out of the rotation, which they haven't had for a few years now. But yeah, I would think that if they added, an Odorizzi or a Paxton in addition to this Quintana move, maybe they sniff for a wild card spot. But it's tough. A lot of teams are getting better across the American League. The White Sox look really good. You can't count the Twins out yet, and they're kind of in that same division. They'll be battling with the White Sox there. The Blue Jays look really good. Are the Rays down now because they've gotten rid of Charlie Morton and Blake Snell? We don't really know, and you have the Blue Jays that have made advances in that division. The Yankees are going to be good. So there's the spaces to get a wild card spot are kind of very slim just from the beginning, So I would say sniffing a wild card spot again.
And then now let's move it kind of in the other direction. Now, if they get, Bauer, which obviously a lot of people want, does that give them now the upper hand in the division, or you still think they're going to be kind of in that wild card situation?
I would say, oh man, it's so tough. I mean, I would like to think that they'd probably threaten for the division a little more with Bauer. Bauer to me is like
guaranteed, I guess. Well, my biggest thing is that adding a Bauer isn't going to guarantee you a division any more than adding one of these or two of these pitchers.
Right.
Like we have
the thing that Bauer would provide would be a certified top of the rotation type guy. He's not Jacob deGrom. He's not Shane Bieber. He's not Walker Buehler. He's not really any of these guys. But he's like, a certified number 2 guy. He would easily be the best pitcher on the Angels rotation. And at this point, I would take that in a second. So Bauer would definitely, we're not saying he's, a certified ace at this point. I have some questions about him, but at the end of the day, he would be a huge boost to this rotation, and really take the load off of guys like Canning and some of the other guys that are trying to develop. Patrick Sandoval, Berea. I feel like the Angels with these guys that have come up, Jose Suarez, they haven't really had a chance to kind of mature. They've just been kind of thrown into the back end of the rotation. We need innings, please help, and they've kind of had trouble with that. So.
Well, now, what about you, Chris? Same thing. If where do you think the Angels are if they get Bauer, or how do you think they'll be if they don't get Bauer and say let's get 2 pitchers like a Paxton and Odorizzi?
I've come to terms. I woke up today. I saw the Bauer talk. I'm fine without us getting Bauer. I'm actually think it's a better move. Go back to all the stuff about Moneyball. You have a Jake Odorizzi lifetime ERA right around what Bauer's is. Bauer's a product of the last year or so. He capitalized on the Astro stuff. For some reason, that translated into my price is higher. He came out on a short season, did well, pitched well on a very short season. And for him to command money like Garrett Cole, and he wants to have, average, yearly salary or whatever it may be, as Garrett Cole. He's not a Garrett Cole. And like Mike said, he's more like a number 2 on any other team. So we're paying for the personality, and I'm past that. And just hearing some of the stuff that came out about, his relationship with Mickey Callaway back in Cleveland. Mickey Callaway, I heard his interview. He's saying everything was fine. Bauer's a leader and so forth. But I don't know. Bauer's the shiny prize, but I think I'd rather have Odorizzi, another pitcher, and right fielder.
Yeah, I don't know if they're gonna get an outfielder, but it maybe, but then I'll go with this real quick. And this is a question that we got here on our Twitter stream. And then we'll move on right after this, but quick, yes or no. Do you think the Angels are in on Bauer as we talk? I'll go Mike first.
Man, so yeah, I saw that Maria Torres article come in late last night, and she was pretty stern and pretty kind of final with that fact that she thinks that there's zero possibility that the Angels land Bauer. But if you read the article, a lot of it is kind of speculation. She rests heavily on the fact that, as we just mentioned, Callaway and Bauer's relationship is eroded and not kind of, is kind of beyond repair. And then she also kind of talks about how the philosophy up to this point has been to sign pitchers to kind of 1-year deals. So I think she's resting on a lot of speculation about knowing what the Angels have done in the past and knowing Callaway and Bauer's relationship. She doesn't really say that I've heard or sources have told me, or it's kind of a speculation piece if you really kind of look at it. But that being said, I mean, she's one of the leading beat writers for the Angels. You kind of have to kind of know that she would have heard something if they were actually making progress towards a deal. But yeah, the article did seem like a lot of speculation of things that we've kind of heard before. So it's tough. I think the Mets are the favorite at this point. I'll just say that.
What about you, Chris? Do you think they're in on Bauer right now if you're the Angels?
No, I don't think they're in on Bauer, but you never know. Crazy things have been done. I don't think we were in on Pujols. I didn't think we were in on Hamilton. We know how that, worked itself out. That did not age very well.
No, it didn't.
Like Bauer, I like his fire. I like his intensity. I like what he brings. I like the smack talk. I love all that, and I think it'll be good for our team. We need something. I think we've been missing it since Weaver. Weaver went out there. He threw high and tight on someone. He'd throw out a Seager or even like a Lackey. Lackey was down to brawl. We need someone like that. But I'm a traditionalist, and when Bauer threw the ball over, center field fence, we know how that all went. I once threw a tennis racket over at the other opponent in high school, but over the fence. So I kind of get it, but I just don't think Madden's going to play those games, and I don't think we need to pay like if Bauer is in a different year. There's no way. I think it's just that free agent class is so just weak.
Right.
And so he's just not that top. He's not that top guy that we build him as. So
yeah,
thanks for listening to my TED Talk.
And so I'm the same way. I don't think the Angels necessarily need him. Bauer is a benefit of the situation as far as not a lot of top end pitchers being out there right now. It's kind of like, yeah, he's the best out there, but when you measure him against other top pitchers, it doesn't mean much. And I think that's what you need to measure him against, not who's available and who's out there now. How is he rate with the other pitchers out there? So some other pitchers that the Angels have missed out on, we'll bring them up right now. Obviously, there's between trades and signings in the bullpen, and obviously starting pitching. I have them out here. If you're watching on our Twitter stream or on our YouTube or on our Facebook, you can see them right here. Mike, I'll start with you. Do any of them stand out to you when you saw them sign or you saw them get traded, it kind of hurt you a little more than the others?
Yeah, I would say probably. It's funny you have Tyler Chatwood there. I remember his first couple seasons with the Angels there, where he was kind of a promising young guy, never really hit his full potential. Has probably still never really hit his full potential. So Chatwood was never really a guy that was on my radar in terms of the Angels kind of getting back. But yeah, it's an old familiar face there. Musgrove was probably the one that I thought the Angels probably had a chance at trading for. Earlier in the season, earlier in the offseason when they were trying to get Snell and Darvish, I didn't think the Angels necessarily had the pieces in the farm system to maybe get a guy like that. But with Musgrove, I felt like we probably had some of the pieces in the farm system to maybe get that one done. That seemed kind of realistic. And then you look at Kirby Yates, Brad Hand. Those are two guys I would have liked to have had. Hendricks has probably priced himself out of the Angels at this point. The White Sox paid him a ridiculous amount of money. Relief pitchers are super volatile. You never know what you're going to get kind of year to year. But the thing with the Angels is that I was hoping that with this offseason that they could either kind of try to bulk up on both the starting pitching and the bullpen. But if they weren't able to go get a Bauer or something, then I'd rather them get like a starter and then get obviously they've got Iglesias, which is a great kind of closer piece at the end of the game. But I would have loved to have seen them get another one of these top tier relievers, whether it was Yates or Hand, to kind of complement Iglesias. I mean, there's still some pieces out there. You know, you're looking at guys like Trevor Rosenthal from the Padres, Yusmeiro Petit, Joaquim Soria, who's pretty old now. He's probably like 45, but yeah. Well, yeah, so that's kind of where I am. I would have liked to have seen them. If we're not going to get Bauer, I would have liked to have seen them kind of pad onto the bullpen, because you see in the playoffs, you know, these teams rely on their bullpens heavily, and they got these lockdown guys at the end of the game. You bring them in the 6th inning, and they shut the game down. So,
what about you, Chris? Anyone on that list, or anyone you could think of in general that you really wanted them to bring over to the Anaheim that just didn't happen?
I mean, other than outside of Musgrove, nobody that I really wanted to have. Tyler Chatwood, kind of going back to like what Joe said, we're in the Inland Empire, so Tyler Chatwood went to high school at Redlands East Valley, so he's a local kid. You always try to root for guys like that. What I do respect about Tyler Chatwood's service time is that he's still going. And the guy that I think we traded him for Chris Iannetta? Is that right? Back in the day, I think we traded him for Chris Iannetta. And just kind of looking at his career, so it's pretty noteworthy. And then Liam Hendricks, I mean, that's a ridiculous contract. Like that's silly. I'm glad we didn't do that.
Right,
that's what he was looking for. But I nobody on this list. I mean, I'm not going to lose sleep over it. I'm not gonna, it's nobody that's that big that was on our radar or my radar.
He was absolutely traded to the Rockies for Chris Iannetta in 2011. A while ago. Wow, that's 10 years ago. If you think about it, that's crazy. But yeah, for me especially, I thought they were going to make a move free agency wise and trade wise. Blake Snell I could have put up here. Darvish I could have put up here, but I never really felt that the Angels had the trade capital, if you will,
right,
to pull off something like that. And even so much for Musgrove, I was very worried about them having the trade capital with something like that, especially now that you see what the Padres gave up to him. But Jameson Taillon, the guy's coming back from the second Tommy John surgery. That's going to be a huge risk to see what he does. You mentioned, Chatwood seemed like had all the promise in the world, has never really been that. Liam Hendricks, I mean, good for him. That's not on our Angels payroll, but good for him. Brad Hand, I was kind of surprised. 1 year, 10.5. I know he got DFA'd at $10 million, and I guess the story behind that is that they're able to. They're only going to pay him like $6 million the first year, and then everything else is deferred after that. So they're able to manipulate that. I would have loved a contract like that for him. Then obviously Kirby Yates, another ex-Angel. Seems like we have a lot of ex-Angels that pop up on a list like this. But had a great year with San Diego in 2019, but then was kind of injury plagued in 2020. So he didn't necessarily have a great year. The trade capital is a big thing. People think it's easy to trade this player for that player, or this bunch of players for that bunch of players. Mike, are you the type that's just like at this point sell it all and get a pitcher in here, or how do you feel about with the trade stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I flip flop on that pretty regularly. It just depends how desperate and like depressed I am at whatever point in the off season. So. Yeah, at this point, I feel like we've made it through the offseason this far to where I don't think a trade's going to happen. We would have probably already pulled the trigger on that in terms of giving away like a Marsh or an Adele or something like that. I don't see that happening. And the fact that we have a new GM and he hasn't kind of cleared the farm system, so to speak. A lot of times when you get a new GM, they see guys that they haven't drafted and they don't have an attachment to, and they're like, okay, well, I never drafted this guy. Let's go ahead and trade him. But it seems like Perry is still high on Marsh and Adele. I mean, they could be traded tomorrow, but I think by this point we would have already seen them traded. But my philosophy is if we're not going to trade pieces for pitching, then we need to spend the money for pitching, and we need to spend whatever it takes to get that pitching. So there has to be one or the other. It can't just be. I'm getting kind of tired of this kind of middle ground that the Angels are walking, where it's we pay over $245 million or whatever for Rendon, but we're going to get Quintana for $8 million. We're going to get maybe Odorizzi for $12 million or something. When it's kind of the area of need, you know, I mean, it's one or the other. You either trade prospect capital, which in this case, it seems like the Angels don't have prospect capital to get those top tier arms, or you spend for top tier arms, which seems like the likely easiest situation for the Angels. But it seems like we're not even going to be able to do that. So it's kind of this limbo situation.
And how do you feel about the whole trading prospects and everything like that, Chris?
I mean, if you look back at the O2 team, right? O2 team's like the benchmark of everything. So if you asked a casual Angel fan right now, who is the ace of the O2 team? And they're like, what? What are you talking about? Like Jared Weaver or something like that, right? So you're going to come up with Jared Washburn. I think we can with the consensus, we can say that Jared Washburn was our ace, had a good season in there, put up some numbers, and then who filled out that whole pitching staff? And you look at, I'm trying to come up with guys, right? Kevin Apier, maybe.
Lackey was unknown because he was
Lackey came up at the
like you knew what was going to happen with him.
Yeah, Lackey came up at the very end, but
like Aaron Seeley too. I think Aaron Seeley was on the team.
Yeah, veteran presence, but we're not talking like a Hall of Famer dude. We're not talking about like a Roger Clemens well, he's not a Hall of Famer. Bad reference there. But we're not talking about one of these guys that we have to have. So if I looked at our pitching staff right now, is it that far off from 0-2? I don't know. I don't think so.
I think the main difference though with that 0-2 team is that we had these kind of league average starter guys. I mean, Washburn had a really good 2002 season, and then you had like Ramon Ortiz and stuff like that. But the bullpen in that 2002 season was electric. You had Brendan Donnelly, Ben Weber. You had, I don't know if Shields was active at that time, maybe. But then you had like K-Rod, you had Percival, Weber, Donnelly. You had these guys that came in the sixth inning basically and shut the game down. So it's if we're not going to get the top tier kind of frontline starters, I think it would have been great to have padded the bullpen a little more.
Yeah, and I think you kind of mentioned it too, Mike, as far as the bullpen arms being very volatile in general. Even Devil Rays, I always call them the Devil Rays. The Rays, kind of had that this year as far as having a really great bullpen once they got into the playoffs and kind of riding that. But if you were to ask me, who are the top three receivers, maybe I can name one. Bullpen guys don't necessarily need to be household names. Like they end up kind of being household names eventually because of what they do in the playoffs. But going into that season, I'm not going to put anybody on that Rays bullpen, but they're still able to put out great production. So if you can have a young guy come up and all of a sudden catch fire, like a K-Rod did for the Angels, like we're talking about the 0-2 season, maybe not that great, but they get the idea, and then maybe find a couple guys that just want to have a career year, and then there you go. So that's kind of my feeling about it, is that if you want to fill the bullpen, there's plenty of opportunities to do it, and just because they're not a household name doesn't mean they can't be. So we're going to take a quick break, and then right after that, we are going to hit up Curators Chronicles.
Let's go! Batter up! We're taking the afternoon off. It's a beautiful day for a ball game, too.
And you're up, Chris. I don't know if you can hear us.
Headphone trouble here.
Okay, there you go. Live podcasting.
All right, it is a beautiful day for a ball, right? Coming up on spring training, one of the best times of the year. Spring is near, right? Wow, that was poetic. Okay, one of my favorite things, as you know by now, if you follow the podcast, if you follow anything that's Halo Hits related, one of my favorite things is to find Angels related items out in the wild, right? Kind of untouched, in not in its natural habitat per se. So one of my things is going to swap meets, and I've been lucky enough in the last 2 years to find a couple baseball bats out there that are gamers. So if you're not into the collecting phenomena, we say gamer. It's something that's certified as game used. I don't have a hologram on it. It's not. I can't go on a website. I can't look it up. But I know what's up. I know that this is true. This has been used. And so I found a couple Angels Legends out there, believe it or not. And one of the craziest things is that both of their names are misspelled on their own back. And so you're saying, hey, curator, how can that be? A lot of times when rookies first come up, their names, especially if it's kind of like something that's a little bit more difficult to, to say, like like a Darren Erstad. Do we spell Darren with two R's and an E and an N or an I? Like, what's going on, right? So both bats that I found are misspelled. So first off, we'll start with this. This was found during COVID. We got a Garrett Anderson gamer, most likely a 95, 94, 95, but you see Garrett is spelled wrong. Got this guy for about $5. There's a little crack on the handle, so that's definitely a gamer. Always love anything that says California Angels on it. And the second gamer, found a few years ago, is the Darren Erstad. The Darren Erstad, and it's got that beautiful Anaheim Angels. We have a lot of fans out there that would love to change the name back. But Darren Erstad on his rookie batch of bats were misspelled. So you're looking about like maybe 20 plus bats out there with that misspelling on Darren. So those are a few things. Got both of those bats for less than $30 combined. So they're out there. You got to look. You got to search hard. You got to pound the pavement. So kind of fun stuff. Haven't found a salmon bat yet. I feel like that would complete like the trifecta. So,
Mike, do you have anything game
that's
used?
all I got now.
I don't have anything game used. Yeah. Super jealous about that. All my stuff is like signed balls. Freshly signed balls. So no, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And you see Erstad's number when he first came up, 27.
That's dope.
Yeah.
So that is another edition of the Curators Chronicles.
Let's go! Batter up! We're taking the afternoon off. It's a beautiful day for a ball game, too.
And so obviously with everything going on, movement-wise, I also wanted to kind of talk about a little bit the AOS and kind of where the AOS stands. I am planning to do this kind of same thing we did last spring training time, where we try to talk to either a beat writer, a reporter, someone that follows the team throughout the season, kind of get their opinion of where their team is at that point. So obviously, like last year, we talked to the A's beat writer, Martin Gallegos, and stuff like that. So we are planning to do that again this year, but this is kind of before we get to that, I kind of want to see where they're at now. So we'll start this right now. Obviously, the first team up, we got the Houston Astros. Some of the bigger departures they have, obviously, George Springer to Toronto. That was big news earlier, I think, last week. But also they have like Roberto Ozuna, Josh Wick are still free agents, but did contribute a lot to the team the last year. And then they've still made some minor additions with Pedro Baez in the bullpen, and then obviously Jason Castro. Angel fans know him as obviously the catcher last year for the Angels for half the season. So when you see the Astros and what they've done and what they've lost, how do you feel, or where do you think the Astros are right now, Mike, compared to what they were maybe last season or the year before that?
Yeah, I mean, they're definitely a step down now, for sure. I mean, losing a guy like George Springer is pretty hard to kind of, recoup or compensate for, especially a guy like Josh Reddick, who they're probably not going to re-sign. Same thing for Ozuna. The thing that with the Astros is that they're still pretty stacked offensively. I mean, you have a guy like Yordan Alvarez, who barely played last year, but had like a really breakout 2019 season. I think he was the rookie of the year. The rotation is a little thinner now these days, but you have a lot of younger guys like Framber Valdez, who kind of, came into his own a little bit last season. So the rotation, obviously, you have a guy like Zach Greinke, who seems to be, he's definitely aging, but still pretty decent pitcher to kind of put in any rotation, really. So yeah, I see the Astros as definitely contenders for the division title, just based off of their offense, and those guys have been together for a while now. They know what it takes. And yeah, they're going to get a full season out of Alvarez, and they just re-signed Michael Brantley as well. So almost lost Brantley to the Blue Jays, but seemingly re-signed him as well. So lineup is still stacked. Yeah, I mean, it's the Astros. I think they're getting weaker, but it's hard to say.
Ahead that they're now they're just kind of falling back to the fact.
Yeah, now they're just coming back down to earth, but that's still like.
Right. What about you, Chris? When you see what they've lost and kind of, obviously gained a little bit, what are your thoughts of the Astros kind of going into what's going to be in like a month?
I miss the old Astros, the Astros that we let into the American League West, the ones that were perennial losers. But yeah, like Mike said, they're coming closer. They're weaker. I'd rather play the 2021 Astros than the 2020 Astros. And Josh Reddick brought like an extra, like a little, extra little juice to the team. He had a lot of character. He had a lot of personality. Springer, I mean, having like George Springer is like your leadoff guy, go out there, hit a home run, get you going. I just don't think they got that pop. So yeah, I'm happy about that.
Thing too, and you kind of mentioned Greinke can still do it, but I mean, I think he's like 37, 36, somewhere around there. I don't think it would surprise anybody if this was a year that maybe he had a down year because of the age. Maybe, it catches up to him. I don't think anyone would be surprised about that. He's definitely not the pitcher he was when he was the Royals or with the Angels for a bit or with the Dodgers. He's definitely not that. And then you don't really have to worry about Verlander. Tommy John surgery in October. And now you figure by the time he gets back, he's going to be near 40. So that might be a guy that not have to worry about anymore, thank God. But yeah, Mike mentioned it. They have a lot of young arms, and if they develop, then they might be exactly where they were a couple years ago. They still got Bregman, they still got Altuve, even though Altuve had a down year. Still have why am I blanking on their shortstop?
Correa.
There you go. Yeah, I don't know why.
Do they still have the trash can though?
Yeah, that's the piece that's missing. That's the missing piece.
Full year. But that's going to be really interesting to see how they do. And obviously, you saw the A's win a division last year, but we'll get to them in a bit. They've lost a ton. Next up, I want to talk about obviously is Seattle. They don't lose a whole lot, but they're also not gaining a whole lot. They're a very young team. Obviously, additions, a familiar name with Keen Middleton, who's got himself in a little bit of Instagram trouble today. And if you don't know, check that out. And, again, but they lose someone like a D Gordon, who is a guy that can get on base and just wreak havoc on you. But like I mentioned, they have a great young nucleus. Obviously they're probably not in the market to gain anyone of significance. But Chris, what do you feel with Seattle? Do you think they can be a contender next year? Do you still think they're a couple years out? Do you think it's not even, worth the time?
Nah. Seattle's a 4th to 5th place team in my book. They're going to be battling with the Rangers to get out of the cellar. I mean, when your key addition is Keenan Middleton, someone that the Angels didn't really want, they kind of that we saw enough of, which I was kind of surprised. He was kind of billed as like the reliever of the future for the Angels, possible closer. We were kind of big on him. We wanted to see him do well. We saw him in Inland Empire, and if that's your big free agent addition, and you lose D Gordon, look kind of like a spark plug for the team. I just don't see Seattle being that team that maybe like 3 years ago when they got and they tried to go after those big free agents. I'm not too worried about them.
And how you feel about Seattle? And like again, they have youth. They do have youth on their side, but how you feel about Seattle, Mike?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a team that's a couple years away, but they're drafting really well. Their farm system is on the rise. They have 2 of the top, I'd say 5 or 6 prospects in baseball, and Jared Kelenic and Jose Rodriguez, two outfielders. So yeah, I mean, they're definitely a team on the rise. But we've said this about the Mariners about 10 years ago when they had guys like Dustin Ackley and Chris Taylor, who's obviously now with the Dodgers, and those guys kind of flamed out. So, they have their farm system's good again. So we'll see if they actually can translate to big leaguers this time around. But yeah, definitely a couple years away.
And then obviously their GM, another ex-Angel, Dipoto, he's not afraid to make a deal. So, all this talk about prospects they have in the system, come this time next year, they could be all gone for whatever. But that's a very big possibility. But, Seattle, again, I think if they do end up winning, or not winning like the division, but winning more games than people thought, I think it's going to be based on that youth and based on almost playing that small ball. I don't know why, but I just feel like they're like a small ball type of team.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and you guys know one thing about Seattle is they always play us like close. Like we have a difficult time with Seattle always. So yeah, you can't go in there.
Next team up, obviously Chris kind of mentioned them a little bit, but the Texas Rangers, Corey Kluber, their big acquisition last year ended up not doing a whole lot for them. Obviously went to the Yankees. That's going to be really interesting to see how that pans out, because I think the Angels were in on both times, the time when he went to Texas and the time when he left Texas. I put Sin-Soo Choo on there because it always seemed like when he was off the bat, it was like in a key situation when it came with the Angels that he produced. I don't know how good he is as a player, but it always seemed like he had that niche to just kind of grind the Angels fans and grind the Angels to key hits and key doubles and stuff like that. But Mike, when you see Texas Rangers, was Chris right as far as are they going to be competing for the Cellar with the Seattle this year?
Yeah, I feel like Seattle kind of surprised some people last year. I mean, Kyle Lewis had a really good season, and the Mariners always play the Angels hard. But yeah, I feel like the Rangers are probably the worst team now in this division. Losing Lance Lynn as well really hurts. Trading him to the White Sox, they got a couple prospects back, but the Rangers, they need to fill a couple more positions too. I think they need like a third baseman right now. So probably the best thing about the Rangers is the new uniforms that they rolled out last year with that old school like script that they got with like the powder blue jerseys. Those are so nice. But that's probably the best thing about this team right now. And the new stadium. We haven't really seen too much of the new stadium. Obviously, it was the host of the World Series, but they got the new stadium. So
they got something. How you feel about the Texas Rangers right now, Chris?
I mean, gosh, I hate to say it, but that's another team that we struggle with. It doesn't matter who they field. The last 10 years or so, they've always given us a hard time, played us close. You're right. Since Shin-Soo Choo always doubling off like the right field wall. Doesn't matter what happened. I felt more confident playing them. On a side note, talking about those unis that they're rolling out, like that powder baby blue and all that stuff. So probably like 8 years ago, I came across one of those pennants. And so after like a Angels game in the garage, I don't know, Mike, have you ever seen the garage, the Halo Haven or whatever? It's like a little mini Angels field. So I actually burned the pennant and did a post just for Instagram. This is how Instagram can get you in trouble. So I burned the pennant, and then all of a sudden it started burning too, it was crazy, right? It got out of control. And at that moment, my wife's pulling up in front of our house, and I had to like drop the pennant, and then I ran. It was like, felt like I was in Tommy Boy or something. And that thing hit the ground. Luckily the garage didn't burn down, but it was that old school, with the cowboy hat on top of the baseball. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
I don't know how that connects to anything, but just wanted to share that with y'all.
Memory lane right there for Chris.
Yeah.
Like flashbacks of getting in trouble and who knows. So obviously the next team that we're talking about won the division last year, but also just lost a lot of guys this year. That's the Oakland A's. I mean, we talked about Hendricks earlier going to the Sox, but Mike Minor to the Royals, Marcus Semien just signed with the Blue Jays. And not to mention there's still a handful of guys out there in free agency. And typical A's
Yeah, I mean, it definitely hurts that they're losing Liam Hendricks for sure. I think Marcus Simeon had a down year last season, but I don't know. We'll see. The verdict is still kind of out on Simeon if he will bounce back and have a bounce back year. But yeah, the fact that they haven't made any additions and they also lost Tommy LaStella yesterday to the Giants. So yeah, they've lost a lot of key pieces, but as you said, the Athletics are the Athletics. They'll find a guy. Chad Pinder will probably be the second baseman and be like a stud. Mark Canna, who I don't even know how or who or why he's so good, but he seems to be so good. Yeah, and they still got Olsen and Chapman on the corner there. So I think they'll still be okay.
How do you feel about the A's going into this season, Chris? Are they division contenders? You think
I
still,
think
or do
you
you
got to
think?
look at. I believe Billy Bean is no longer with the A's, right? So I think that's actually your biggest departure, not a player on the field. He's kind of defined the A's the last 20-plus years as that Moneyball team. We've seen it in Hollywood with movies. There's something to be said about his method. Going back to like what Mike said, you throw him like a Pinder, all of a sudden your second baseman. He kind of coined that phrase, like, do they get on base? Do they get on base? And that's what the A's have been known for. So I think that's your biggest departure there.
And this kind of brings me, obviously, those are the teams in the division, and we can talk a little about the Angels too. But I don't see the division as a whole. I mean, you can even put the Angels into that, but making a lot of acquisitions this year to necessarily make themselves better. Like, you added a little stuff here, you added a little stuff there. We're kind of resigning their own. But as a whole, you want to say everyone loves the idea of who won the off season. But if you're going to just judge what has happened or what could happen or possibly happen down the road, I still easy to say that the Angels won the off season in this division as far as bringing in players like Iglesias in the bullpen will have a need there, like bringing in Jose Quintana to add depth. Like, I think Suzuki brings depth. I think it's easy to say that the Angels have quote unquote won the offseason so far in the division. Do you agree, disagree, Mike?
Yeah, I mean, I would say so. In terms of just like sheer additions, the Angels have definitely bolstered their roster. I mean, Jose Iglesias is a great. I mean, they lose Andrelton Simmons, who is a all-world, one of the greatest defensive shortstops of all time. But they replace him with Jose Iglesias, who's also like incredibly great defensive shortstop. So, and then they add Iglesias at the back end of the bullpen, which I think is probably my favorite move of the offseason so far. They gave up little to nothing. They sent Noe Ramirez to the Reds to get him. And yeah, I mean, I would say the Angels probably, because you look at the Rangers, they haven't made any upgrades. Mariners haven't made any upgrades. A's haven't added anybody. So I would say the Astros would probably be the second team that's made the best additions in terms of getting Pedro Baez. Pedro Baez is a sneaky bullpen ad. That guy was like rock solid for the Dodgers for like, it seemed like for forever.
Dude, the Dodger fans hated that guy though.
I know. I know.
Hated him.
Which I never understood, because you look at his baseball reference page and it's like he's been solid for years, but for some reason they always thought he was like shaky coming out of the bullpen. But yeah.
And then he fits kind of right where that Ozuna probably going to depart. He'll fit that back end of the bullpen. But and then another thing too, I've kind of put it out there on our Instagram, and if you follow us on Instagram, Halo_Haven, I put it out about this time yesterday. I asked a simple question: who do you think the best starting pitcher in the AL West is right now, healthy? Because I got quite a bit of Verlanders, and he's not pitching this year. So, healthy starting pitching in the AL West. Chris, I'll ask you first. Is there a name at all that pops into your head that is without a doubt the best starting pitcher in this division?
Outside the Angels, you're right.
Or just anyone. You can count the Angels if you want. Just anyone in this division.
I saw somebody throw up Lance McCullers. I thought that was somewhat worthy. But yeah, the Astros don't bring the guys like they used to. Now that Cole's out, I would say McCullers for sure.
And what about you, Mike? Do you have a name that kind of sticks out to you as far as the best starting pitching in the West?
Yeah, I mean, when I saw that poll yesterday, I had to like really scratch my head and think. I was like, okay, so I had to think about like who the best pitchers are on each team. So you got like Marco Gonzalez probably on the Mariners, right? And it's like, is he really the best? I'm like,
Right, and he's so
probably.
young and so kind of inexperienced. You're not sure what you're gonna like. If this is who do you think is gonna be great in 2 years, then oh yeah, he can definitely fit in there. But as far as opening day is tomorrow, who's the best starting pitching? That's it.
Yeah, I mean, if I had to pick out of the rosters and opening day, I would probably just go with the veteran guy. I'd probably go with Greinke, honestly. He can still spin it. He throws that like Ephus pitch or whatever that's like 60, it's like 60 miles an hour, and it's just ridiculous. And you go back to 2019 in that game 7 against the Nationals, he was like pitching an all-time World Series game, and then they took him out, and Will Harris came in and gave up that homer to Howie Kendrick. But yeah, I mean, it's so tough, man. I mean, I would say I'm being a bit of a homer with this, but fully healthy, knowing what we saw of him, a couple years ago, Ohtani definitely has the best stuff in the division, but it's just a matter of health. So I'll probably just say Greinke just to kind of, yeah. I mean, he's the sure thing. The A's have a lot of young guys. They got Frankie Montas, they got Jesus Luzardo, who's super good, AJ Puck, but like these guys have been pitching for. They haven't really kind of come out and pitched for 3 or 4 great seasons yet. So it's kind of hard to say.
Yeah, and I think that was the biggest thing when same thing. I started thinking about it, and that's why I put it out there. For as much, crap as the Angels starting rotation gets, and obviously the last couple of years kind of it's earned. But when you look at where the division is right now, it'd be real easy too to make the argument for Bundy, for Dylan Bundy, if he's able to do what he did last year,
Yeah.
like he did through the whole year, for this quote unquote terrible rotation, might have the best pitcher in the division.
Yeah.
So it's for me, it's like, well, obviously there's something there, I guess, to build off of. Bundy being the best pitcher in the division, and I think it was so crazy to me that I never really got a full consensus on anybody. Like, there's 2 people for Luzardo, there's 2 people for Greinke, there's 2 people for Bundy. There's always someone else that they brought up. It wasn't like, 80% picked one guy. Like, if you go, let's say AL East, I'm sure you're getting a bunch of Coles. You might get well, now that Snell's out, you might just get 100% Cole. So you might get some reuse there, here and there, but it's going to be overwhelming, I think. And then you never got that with the AL West. And I think it's interesting to see, and we kind of mentioned it too, the 0-2 World Series run, they were a wild card team, so it wasn't like they were dominating at all. I mean, they didn't even win the division. So in my eyes, I'm thinking, well, can the Angels win a division this year and get hot? And I think it's very possible they can win a division, and it might not be a great record, but they can win a division and get hot at the right time. So, Chris, what do you think about that?
If you look at the sole reason we didn't make the playoffs in that abbreviated 2020 season, it's our relief pitching, right? I think we were number 1 in most blown saves, right? So we were winning in something, and we barely missed the playoffs. So we would have went into the weekend against the Dodgers and kind of took care of business. We would have been in the playoffs. We would have creeped in. So I think we solidified the bullpen a little bit with Rizal. I'm high on that guy. So you have the back end of the bullpen. You have Mike Myers. You have some other guys. Like you have a lot of hope there. We lost. I mean, probably at least 10 games because of that bullpen in a 60-game season. 60-game season. So I think just the improvement there. I mean, we're a different team already.
Yeah, and I said it before. If they out of the, I think like 15, 16 blown saves or whatever, something like that.
That's something crazy.
If they have 4 less blown saves, or half or whatever, they're in the playoffs. And then you see what the Astros did to the A's. They end up beating the A's in the playoffs, and they can make a run. Yeah. Does that change Angels fans' idea of what this rotation is, and is it just a piece away compared to what I think a lot of Angel fans think right now, where it's like we're 3 or 4 pieces away? We gotta trade for 2, sign another 2, and kind of revamp. Like, I think that's kind of really interesting to see what it is. But kind of like, Mike, what do you think about this whole, where the rotation is now, and kind of how it plays out?
Yeah, I mean, you would have to think that one of these years, one of these seasons, that guys like Haney, Haney has a career year, or Griffin Canning kind of reaches his kind of potential at some point. So you think there's got to be one season where even signing these like 1 year guys, where it's whether it's Quintana or obviously the previous 1 year signings for starting pitching didn't really work out, but you got to think that I mean, you got to think that one of these years, like, these signings are going to pay off, and maybe it's this year, and maybe Ohtani comes back and pitches like really, really well, and he stays healthy, but it's a lot of maybes. But yeah, I mean, they could be, two or three turnaround pitching performances away from reaching the playoffs. Say Haney puts up a career year, say Canning pitches really well, say say Bundy continues to build off of his season last season that he had, then yeah, I mean, anything's possible. And I think that with Iglesias at the back end of the bullpen, I think that's going to make a huge difference. He's like a top 10, top 7 closer in the game. So I think it's going to make a huge difference.
And I think too, and I was talking to a buddy about the whole Iglesias signing in the back end of the bullpen. I think you kind of mentioned it's kind of under the radar just because of the fact that he pitched in Cincinnati. Let's be honest, Cincinnati doesn't get a whole bunch of national airtime, so you can be a top 10, top 7 kind of closer. But if you play in some of those smaller markets, unless you're from the Midwest or something like that, you're really not going to know who this guy is. And I think that's the situation with Iglesias, and fans are being like, okay, that's cool, but they don't really. I don't know if they necessarily don't trust it or what. But I think that's going to be, like you mentioned, it's going to be a really good pickup for the Angels, and it's going to pay off, I think, quite a bit going into this next season, especially kind of like Chris said, if he can, convert saves, which was the biggest thing for the Angels this last year, it's going to change the whole dynamic of where this team is, not only in a hunt for the playoffs, but I think just as a contender in general. So kind of moving on now, obviously, to the next thing. I mentioned it earlier. We are about a month away. I think the first game, I think, is scheduled for like February 28th. So like literally as you're recording this now, we're like a month away from games out in Tempe. There has been some reports as far as the Arizona Mariners and the owners trying to push back the start of spring training, but it looks like it's still going to be going on as normal. A lot of things that might change this year as far as availability to players. I know me and Chris have been out to spring training a couple times. I think the availability of players is a huge part of spring training's attraction, as being able to get signatures, being able to go down to those lower fields. But Chris, I'm going to ask you, because like I said, we've done it a couple times. How do you feel about spring training going on, but not being able to do all that kind of extra stuff that we've done so many times?
Yeah, I'm not. I don't know, man. I'm not in. That's the hallmark of what spring training is, and even when it was normal, the last, up until like when it all shut down, which we were there that last week, and you could feel that. You could feel like they were told to not interact with fans, and it was not the same spring training. And if I'm gonna, load up the minivan and head out to Tempe, I don't have a minivan. Just want to let you know, I don't have kids either. But if I were to do that, I'm not going to spend all that money, hotel, all that, to have no access, to no autographs or anything like that. And spring training was already becoming this commercial beast that it wasn't years ago. I mean, you used to be able to go to Palm Springs, back in the early 90s, but even much before that, where they used to just hand you stuff, hand you a bat, hand you some cleats. And then now to have no interactions with the player, I mean, it's like I might as well just wait for the season, invest my money there, and it's kind of sad.
What do you think, Mike, about the whole idea of pushing spring training back? Would you want to see that, or do you think they need to get this thing started as soon as possible?
Yeah, I think they need to get it started along the same lines with the Arizona mayor. It's funny, or sorry, I think it's the mayor of one of the cities in the spring training kind of general area.
Along with the Glendale.
Yeah, right. So I mean, it's also the home of the Arizona Coyotes, the NHL team, who are playing hockey games to an arena with people in them. So and we just got, well, we're almost done with a full NFL season. NBA obviously is doesn't have anybody there, but people are playing. Sports is back. In a limited capacity. Obviously, no fans. In some cases, there's fans, like at the NHL, I guess, and I know that the Packers NFC Championship game, there's a few thousand people at Lambeau. So I don't see why not. If you follow the protocols, we just got through an MLB season. There were definitely some instances where you had the Cardinals who couldn't play for like a week and a half or something. But yeah,
at the beginning of the year.
Yeah, I think that they need to start this. I don't want to be too insensitive, but I think it's doable given what other sports are doing and to the level that they're doing it. I don't see why baseball couldn't go ahead and do a contained, smart spring training.
Yeah, I agree too. Like, it's going to be hard, and then obviously let's make this what it is. It's like a kind of a business deal. It's going to be really hard to tell the players, "Hey, we got to delay the season because of COVID and everything like that." When you just got done with a season in the same circumstances, and even with the vaccine and all that stuff, blah blah blah. I mean, you can however you feel about it, but it seemed like back then when the season was going on in 2020 was a lot more at risk, a lot more uncertainty. Where now you kind of do have an idea of what you can do and where. You got to tighten up your belt and make sure you don't do this, make sure you do that. So it's gonna be really hard to tell the players, hey, we need to delay the season and maybe cut it down to 150 games and take some money out of your pocket because of it. The players, obviously the Players Association and the owners already are not on great terms, and it just seems like this could end up being another kind of situation that's not going to be great for that relationship. So we'll have to wait and see how that plays out. And again, spring training is around the corner, starting at the end of February and then pretty much all into March. That's when we're planning to roll out our interviews with beat writers and just kind of people that follow the teams in the division. And that's what we want to do. That's kind of our timeline. So that's pretty much going to wrap it up for this episode of the All Angels podcast. Again, I want to thank Mike Browne. If you want to hear more of his stuff, and again, kind of a broader overall MLB view, check out his own podcast, Big League Chewing, on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. So if you're listening to this podcast on your phone or on your computer, you can definitely check it out. You got his Twitter up there at ChewingCast on Twitter. Mike, is there, do you have an idea about what you're going with into the season, into spring training, or what's going down with you coming up?
Yeah, so lately I've been trying to provide updates when there's been big free agent signings. Like when Bauer signs, I'll probably hop on and do a quick kind of recap. So I've been trying to kind of do a weekly episode. But heading into spring training, I'll probably start bringing back some of the team kind of Twitter folks and beat writers and bloggers and stuff on to talk about their respective teams and kind of the outlook going into 2021. So.
And there's a lot of movement too. So there's going to be a lot of people to talk to as far, obviously the Padres are making big moves. Obviously the Toronto's making big moves. So that's going to be a lot of fun. And again, if you listen to this podcast, you know exactly where to find them, exactly where you find this podcast. As far as our stuff, there you see it now. Instagram, Halo_Haven, All Angels podcast, YouTube page where you can see this visually. Also, same thing with Twitter at Halo_Haven and Facebook, the Facebook page, Halo Haven fan page. You can see this as we record it live, and then obviously it's going to be saved there under the library. But if you do listen to the podcast on your especially Apple, we ask that you give us a rating, give us a review, help us spread the word, especially now that the season's coming around the corner. We love to get more new listeners, and kind of go full on into the next season. But yeah, like I said, that's going to wrap it for us. I am Daniel Garcia.
I'm Chris, the Curator Johnson.
And that is Mike Browne, the special co-host for this episode. We'll be back next week. If there's a Bauer signing to a certain team in Orange County, we'll probably do something like this. If it's not, if you go somewhere else, we'll probably do some kind of interview. We'll figure out from there, but definitely expect us back at some point next week. But again, follow those social media feeds to know exactly when. So until next time, thank you very much. I am Daniel Garcia, and have a good night.